Hey guys, and welcome to Bedtime History. Tonight, we're re-stepping into a pair of worn-out boots in a town square you've never seen before. It's a warm spring day in Nuremberg, Germany. The year is 1828, and the cobblestones feel uneven and strange beneath your feet. You're disoriented, clutching two letters, and the only words you seem to know are a garbled phrase about wanting to be a cavalryman like your father, and your own name, or at least, the name you think is yours. The world is a kaleidoscope of overwhelming sounds and colors, a stark, terrifying contrast to the silent, featureless darkness that has been your entire existence until this very moment. This is a story of a life that began not with a cry, but with a confused stumble into the pages of history, a mystery that would captivate and divide Europe. It's a bewildering tale, and to be perfectly honest, plunged into these circumstances without modern knowledge or support, you probably wouldn't survive this. So before you get too comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what we do here. We'd also love to see where and when you're tuning in from, so please drop your city and local time in the comments below. It's always a treat to see how far our little circle of history lovers reaches. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for some gentle, ambient hum, and let's all relax into tonight's journey. You are standing in the Unschlittplatz, the tallow square of Nuremberg. The name itself is a bit unappetizing, derived from the tallow, or animal fat, that was once processed and sold here. You don't know this, of course. You don't know anything. The May sun is warm on your face, a sensation so alien it's almost painful. Your eyes, accustomed only to pitch black, are struggling to process the flood of light. Everything is a blur of ochre-walled buildings, steep red-tiled roofs, and the bewildering movement of people. They flow around you like a river around a strange, unmoving stone. Their clothes are a riot of textures and colors you lack the words to describe. They murmur and point, their faces a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. You can feel their stares like physical things, little pinpricks on your skin. Your own clothes are a strange collection. A pair of high-heeled boots, clearly not made for you, pinch your feet. Your trousers are gray cloth, and your jacket is a hand-me-down, its origins as mysterious as your own. Around your neck, a simple silk kerchief is tied. It's all so much. In your hand, you clutch a letter. It is addressed to the Honorable Captain of the 4th Squadron of the 6th Cavalry Regiment. The handwriting is crude, the German rustic. It claims that you were left with the writer, an unnamed poor laborer, as an infant in 1812. The letter states that you have been kept in total seclusion, never taking a single step out of the house, and that you had been taught to read and write, but that you should be made a soldier, for that is what your father was. There is a second, smaller note tucked inside, seemingly older, written in a Latin script. It purports to be from your mother to the person who would raise you, stating your name is Casper, and giving your date of birth as April 30th, 1812. It hints at a noble father in the 6th Cavalry Regiment, but says he is now dead. The two letters are your only link to a past you cannot remember, your only identity. Historians still debate the authenticity of the two letters you carried, with many believing they were both penned by the same hand, a clever bit of misdirection to obscure your true origins. A shoemaker, Georg Weichmann, is the first to approach you. You simply repeat your nonsensical phrase, "I want to be a writer like my father was," and point to the letter. You also mutter, "Don't know." It's your entire vocabulary. It's a bit like having a severely limited chatbot for a personality, except the tech support is centuries away. He takes you, this strange apparition, to the house of Captain von Wessenig. When you arrive, the captain is not home. While you wait, you show no interest in the food or drink offered, except for a piece of dark bread and a glass of water, which you consume with an almost desperate hunger. This becomes a pattern, an immediate and defining characteristic. Your diet is as limited as your vocabulary. When the captain finally returns, he is faced with a conundrum. You can write one name, Caspar Hauser, but you can't answer any questions. You show no recognition of money, and your reaction to a lit candle is one of childlike wonder, not fear. The whole situation is bizarre. Nuremberg in 1828 was a city steeped in a long, proud history. It had been a free imperial city within the Holy Roman Empire, a center for artists like Albrecht Dürer, and a hub of the German Renaissance. This historical context is important. It was a city with a strong sense of order and bureaucracy. A boy appearing out of thin air with a cryptic note was not just a curiosity. It was a problem for the civil authorities. They had paperwork for everything, but there was no form for mysterious teenager materializes in town square. It's a bit like trying to file your taxes with a crayon drawing of a horse. Ultimately, unable to get any coherent information from you, the authorities make a decision. You are treated as a vagrant, a stray. They take you to the city jail, located in the Westnergate Tower of the Imperial Castle, to be cared for by a jailer named Andreas Hiltel. As you are led away, your gait is a painful, unsteady shuffle, the walk of someone whose legs have never properly learned their function. You move as if you are wading through thick mud, each step an uncertain and agonizing effort. You don't know it, but your journey from complete obscurity to international phenomenon has just begun. The darkness is over, and the blinding, confusing light of the world is just starting to pour in. You are now in the small town of Mill Hill, just north of London. The year is 1879. 22 years have passed since that ambitious meeting of the Philological Society. The Great Dictionary Project has been a spectacular failure. It has chewed up and spat out 2 editors, produced a mountain of disorganized paper slips, and achieved almost nothing. The whole enterprise is a laughingstock, a cautionary tale about academic overreach. The publisher, Oxford University Press, is on the verge of scrapping it entirely. They need a miracle. They need a new editor. And so, you find yourself standing outside a modest schoolhouse, about to meet the man they have reluctantly turned to. His name is James Augustus Henry Murray. He is 42 years old, but his magnificent, flowing beard and the intensity in his eyes make him seem both older and ageless, like a character who has stepped directly out of the Old Testament. He is not a product of Oxford or Cambridge. He is a largely self-taught polymath, the son of a village tailor from a small Scottish town. By the age of 15, he was a teacher, and by 20, he had reportedly taught himself the fundamentals of over 24 languages, from French and German to Russian, Tongan, and Aramaic. He is a man who sees language not as a set of rules, but as a living organism, a vast, interconnected ecosystem of sound and meaning. When he speaks, you can hear the faint, musical lilt of his native Scots accent, a reminder of his outsider status in the hallowed halls of English academia. You follow him into his home, and it's immediately clear that this is no ordinary schoolmaster. Every wall is lined with books. Books are stacked on chairs, on tables, and in precarious towers on the floor. It looks less like a home and more like a library that has exploded. His children, he will eventually have 11 of them, are used to navigating this paper-based obstacle course. They are, in a very real sense, being raised inside a dictionary. Murray is showing you the state of the project as he inherited it. He leads you to an outbuilding, a shed really, and inside are sacks and crates overflowing with paper slips sent in by volunteers over the last 2 decades. It's a chaotic mess. Some slips are meticulously written. Others are barely legible scrawls. Some are on fine paper, others on the back of a butcher's bill. It's a testament to the enthusiasm of the British public, but it's also a logistical nightmare. It's like being handed 1,000,000 randomly ordered puzzle pieces and being told to assemble a perfect sphere. The delegates from Oxford University Press are skeptical. They see a provincial schoolteacher with no university degree and a chaotic household. They offer him the job, but it's a part-time position. He is to continue his teaching job while somehow, in his spare time, wrangling this linguistic monster into submission. It's an insulting offer, a clear sign that they don't really believe this can be done. Murray, however, sees not chaos, but potential. He sees the raw material of the greatest book the world has ever known. He accepts the offer. This is the moment the project is truly born again. You can feel the shift in the air. The years of drift and failure are over. A mind of singular power and obsessive dedication has just taken the helm. He knows this will be his life's work. He just doesn't know it will demand not only his life, but the lives of his family too. A common historical fact is that the Victorian era was the age of the amateur scientist and collector. People like Charles Darwin were gentlemen naturalists, and it was common for educated people to have passionate hobbies in geology, botany, or, in this case, philology. The idea of a volunteer army of readers was therefore not as strange as it might seem to us today. It tapped into a pre-existing culture of intellectual curiosity and civic contribution. However, an obscure and rather charming fact is that Murray was an expert on the local dialects of southern Scotland, and he even published a book on it. This deep understanding of how language varied from village to village gave him a unique appreciation for the diversity and messiness of English, a quality that would be essential for the dictionary. He wasn't a linguistic purist. He was a collector, fascinated by every strange specimen he could find. As Murray stands there, surrounded by sacks of words, a quiet determination settles over him. He is already designing a system, a new structure to bring order to the chaos. Historians still debate the precise moment Murray realized the true lifelong commitment he was making. Was it in this initial survey of the disastrous state of the project, or did the full weight of the task only dawn on him gradually, as the years and the letters of the alphabet crawled by? Some believe he knew from day one, seeing it as his divine calling. Others think he was, like the press, naively optimistic at first, only to be trapped by the project's immense gravity. For now, you see a man on the precipice of a great adventure. He is about to build a special workshop in his garden, a structure made of wood and corrugated iron. He will call it the scriptorium. It will be the engine room of the English language, a place of immense intellectual labor, and the setting for the next stage of our story. You can almost smell the fresh-cut pine and the promise of a new beginning. You are standing in the garden of James Murray's home in Mill Hill. The air is cool, and the scent of damp earth hangs in the air. Before you is a structure that looks like a cross between a garden shed and a small chapel. It's made of wood and iron, with large windows to let in as much natural light as possible. This is the scriptorium, the purpose-built headquarters for the dictionary. It is Murray's solution to the problem of where to house a river of words. Inside, it's a marvel of bespoke organization. The walls are lined not with bookshelves, but with a towering grid of 1,029 wooden pigeonholes, all meticulously labeled. Below them are larger compartments for books and bundles of paper. In the center of the room stands a long table where Murray and his two assistants will work. This is the heart of the operation, the brain of the dictionary. Now that he has a physical space, Murray turns to the real problem, the method. The old system was a failure. He needs a new one, and it needs to be robust enough to handle millions of data points. He begins by reissuing the call for volunteers. He writes a pamphlet, an appeal to the English-speaking and English-reading public, which is distributed across the British Empire and the United States. He asks for readers to scour books from every period of English history. When a volunteer finds a word used in a particularly interesting way, they are to write it down on a standardized slip of paper. The slip must contain the word itself, the full sentence in which it appears, and a precise citation, book title, page number, and date of publication. It is, in essence, a massive analog crowdsourcing campaign. In an age without photocopiers or the internet, this is the only way to gather the necessary evidence. It's like asking people to build a search engine by hand, one query at a time. The response is overwhelming. Offers of help pour in from across the globe. Vicars in sleepy country parishes, professors in American universities, and literary ladies with time on their hands all sign up to become word hunters. You watch as the first sacks of new mail arrive at the scriptorium. The Postal Service becomes an essential partner in this grand enterprise. Murray's children are enlisted to help. Their job is to sort the incoming slips, first alphabetically by the word, and then chronologically by the quotation's date. This is how the history of a word would be built. A slip from Chaucer in the 1300s would go first, followed by one from Shakespeare in the 1600s, one from a scientific journal in the 1800s, and so on. By arranging the slips, you could watch a word be born, change its meaning, and sometimes even die. It's a brilliantly simple system, but the sheer manual labor involved is staggering. It is a slow, painstaking process. For a common word like go, there might be thousands of slips, each needing to be read, sorted, and placed in its correct chronological sequence. The scriptorium, once so clean and new, is soon buried in paper. The pigeonholes are overflowing. The floor is covered in bundles of slips tied up with string. A common historical fact is that the 1870s saw the invention of the telephone by Alexander Graham Bell. This revolution in communication stands in stark contrast to Murray's project, which relied on the centuries-old technology of handwritten letters and the National Postal Service. The world was speeding up, but the dictionary was, by necessity, moving at the speed of a pen on paper. This juxtaposition highlights the unique, almost anachronistic nature of the task. And speaking of communication, an obscure but fascinating detail is that Murray was a committed advocate for spelling reform. He found standard English spelling to be illogical and frustrating, and would have preferred a more phonetic system. It's one of the great ironies of his life that he, a man who disliked its chaotic spelling, would become the ultimate authority on the very language he wished to change. He had to suppress his own desires for reform in the name of accurately recording the language as it was, not as he wished it to be. The atmosphere in the scriptorium is one of quiet, focused industry. The only sounds are the rustle of paper, the scratching of pens, and the occasional murmur as Murray or an assistant makes a discovery. Historians still debate how much of the sorting and initial editorial work was done by Murray as wife and 11 children. While they are often portrayed as happy helpers, some scholars suggest that their contribution was immense and largely uncredited, effectively turning the family home into an unpaid lexicographical factory. The line between family life and the dictionary's demands was becoming irrevocably blurred. You can see the toll it's taking. Murray works punishing hours, often late into the night, his magnificent beard now occasionally dusted with snuff, which he used to stay awake. The 10-year project is already looking like a 20-year sentence. And all this time, a steady stream of exquisitely researched, perfectly formatted slips begins to arrive from a single prolific contributor, a man named Dr. W.C. Minor. He seems to have access to a vast private library and an endless amount of time. Murray is immensely grateful. He has no idea who this man is or where he is writing from. He simply knows that Dr. Minor is one of his best soldiers in this great war of words. Now we must leave the ordered, papery world of the scriptorium and travel across the Atlantic, back in time a few years. You are in the United States, in the harrowing final years of the American Civil War. The air is thick with the smell of gunpowder, sweat, and antiseptic. You are in a military hospital, a place of organized chaos and quiet suffering. And here you meet a young man named William Chester Minor. He is not a combat soldier. He is an army surgeon, a graduate of the prestigious Yale Medical School. He is intelligent, refined, and from a wealthy, well-connected family. On the surface, he is a man of privilege and promise. But the war is changing him. It is his job to treat the wounded, to perform amputations, and to witness the brutal realities of conflict. One day, he is ordered to brand the face of an Irish deserter with the letter D. This is a standard military punishment of the time, designed to permanently mark a man as a coward. For a sensitive, educated man like Miner, this act of institutionalized cruelty is profoundly traumatic. He is haunted by the face of the man he branded. The Irishman's eyes, full of fear and defiance, become a recurring image in his mind. This moment, this single, brutal act, seems to be a tipping point. It plants a seed of paranoia in his mind, a seed that will grow into a suffocating forest. He begins to feel pursued. He believes that Irishmen, specifically agents of the Fenian Brotherhood, an Irish Republican organization, are stalking him, seeking revenge for what he did. After the war, Miner's mental state deteriorates. You follow him as he tries to escape his demons. He moves to a quiet post in Florida, hoping the sunshine and calm will soothe his mind. It doesn't work. The unseen tormentors are there too, whispering to him from the shadows, entering his room at night. His paranoia becomes more elaborate, more terrifying. Believing his persecutors are everywhere, he flees America and moves to London in 1871, hoping to lose himself in the vast, anonymous city. He rents rooms in Lambeth, a rough, working-class neighborhood. It's a strange choice for a wealthy American gentleman, but perhaps he believes the squalor will provide a kind of camouflage. It is here that his paranoia reaches its tragic crescendo. One cold, pre-dawn morning in February 1872, you are with him in his room. He hasn't slept. He is convinced that someone has broken in. Clutching a pistol he carries for protection, he flings open his door and runs out into the street. In the dim gaslight, he sees a figure. It is George Merritt, a stoker at a local brewery, a father of 7 who is simply walking to work early to support his family. In Miner's paranoid mind, Merritt is not an innocent stranger. He is one of them. He is the Irishman. He is the assassin sent to kill him. Miner raises the pistol. He fires. Merritt falls to the cobblestones, his lunch pail clattering beside him. He dies almost instantly. William Chester Miner, the Yale-educated surgeon, the gentleman scholar, has become a killer. The aftermath is swift. The police arrive. Miner is arrested, confused, and terrified. At his trial, his wealth allows for a robust legal defense. A common historical fact is that the legal concept of not guilty by reason of insanity was well established in British law by this time, largely thanks to the Manhattan Rules of 1843. These rules provided a framework for determining if a defendant was sane enough to be held legally responsible for their actions. It was clear to everyone involved, from the police to the lawyers, that Miner was not a cold-blooded murderer, but a man in the grip of a profound delusion. A more obscure fact is that the American Consul General personally intervened in the case, a sign of Miner's family's influence, ensuring he received the best possible consideration from the British legal system. This intervention was crucial in sparing him the gallows. Historians still debate the specific nature of Miner's mental illness. Diagnosed at the time with dementia praecox, a precursor to what we now call schizophrenia, the exact combination of his genetic predispositions and his wartime trauma remains a subject of speculation. Was the branding incident the sole cause, or did it merely awaken a latent condition that would have emerged anyway? We can never know for sure. What is certain is that he is found not guilty by reason of insanity. He is not sent to prison. Instead, he is committed to the new Broadmoor Asylum for the criminally insane, to be held there indefinitely until he is deemed cured. As you watch him being escorted away, you see a man whose life has been shattered. He is now a prisoner, not of the law, but of his own mind. He is lost in a labyrinth of fear with no apparent way out. And it is from within this labyrinth that he will find a new, unlikely purpose. You are now approaching a formidable Victorian structure, rising from the Berkshire countryside like a grim red brick fortress. This is the Broadmoor Asylum for the criminally insane. It looks like a prison, with its high walls, barred windows, and imposing gatehouse. But it represents a relatively new idea in mental health care. It was built not just to confine, but to treat. It was, for its time, a progressive institution. The prevailing theory was that a calm, structured environment, meaningful work, and moral guidance could help to heal a damaged mind. As you pass through the gates, you are entering a self-contained world, a society of the forgotten. William Miner arrives here in 1872. He is inmate number 742. Given his status as a gentleman, he is afforded certain privileges. He is given 2 adjoining cells. One is for sleeping, and the other he is allowed to use as a study and a library. His family's wealth ensures a steady stream of money, which he uses to purchase books. Boxes and crates of books arrive for him, filling his second cell from floor to ceiling. His room becomes an oasis of scholarship in a sea of madness. He can stand at his barred window and look out over the peaceful English countryside, a landscape so different from the battlefields of his nightmares. But the tranquility is an illusion. His paranoia does not leave him at the asylum gates. The nocturnal visitations continue. He still believes his persecutors can enter his room, abduct him, and subject him to unspeakable torments. He rigs elaborate booby traps with buckets of water and piles of furniture to warn him of their approach. The asylum staff, for the most part, tolerate his eccentricities. They see him as a quiet, scholarly man, a model patient, despite his persistent delusions. You spend time with him in his cell. It is a strange, bifurcated existence. By day, he is the calm, meticulous scholar, surrounded by his beloved books. He reads voraciously, his mind a sharp, analytical tool. He is courteous to the guards and doctors. He even uses his medical knowledge to assist the asylum surgeon. He is haunted by immense guilt over the death of George Merritt. He arranges to send a portion of his army pension to Merritt's widow, Eliza. It is an act of private penance, a desperate attempt to atone for a crime he knows he committed, even if he wasn't in his right mind. Eliza, initially hostile, eventually accepts the money, and a strange, distant relationship forms. She even visits him at Broadmoor and brings him books. It's a profoundly Victorian arrangement, a mix of genuine remorse, social obligation, and the stark power imbalance between the wealthy American and the working-class widow. But at night, the scholar disappears, and the terrified victim takes his place. The demons come. You can feel the cold dread that seeps into the cell as the sun goes down. He sleeps with his pistol under his pillow, a privilege strangely afforded to him, perhaps because the staff fears taking it from him more than they fear him having it. His life is a pendulum, swinging between the life of the mind and the terror of the mind. A common historical fact is that Victorian asylums, even the best ones like Broadmoor, operated on a system of routine and classification. Patients were categorized and given work suited to their abilities and social class. Miner's scholarly pursuits were seen as a perfectly acceptable form of therapeutic occupation for a gentleman. This structured environment was believed to bring order to a disordered mind. A more obscure and poignant fact is that Miner was a talented artist, particularly with watercolors. He would spend hours painting delicate images of birds and flowers, a stark contrast to the violence of his delusions and his past. These small, beautiful paintings were another escape, another way to impose order and beauty on a world that felt, to him, chaotic and threatening. You can see him at his small desk, brush in hand, his focus absolute, the terrors of the night held at bay for a few precious hours by the simple act of capturing the curve of a petal or the color of a feather. This artistic talent reveals a side of him beyond the madman label, a deep appreciation for beauty and a gentle, sensitive nature. For years, this is his life, a monotonous cycle of reading, painting, atonement, and nocturnal terror. He is a man with a brilliant mind and nothing to do with it. His intellect is a powerful engine, idling in a locked garage. Historians still debate the effectiveness of the moral treatment practiced at Broadmoor. While it was certainly more humane than the brutal conditions of earlier asylums like Bedlam, critics argue that it was often a matter of managing, rather than curing, the patients. For a man like Miner, whose delusions were so deeply entrenched, was the calm routine a form of therapy? Or was it merely a comfortable prison where his illness could be contained without ever being truly challenged? As you observe him, pacing his cell, you feel an immense sense of waste. All this knowledge, all this intelligence, locked away from the world. But then, one day, a small pamphlet arrives at the asylum. It is James Murray's appeal to the English-speaking and English-reading public. It is a call for volunteers. For a man drowning in time and surrounded by books, it is a lifeline. You are back in Miner's double cell at Broadmoor. The year is now 1879, the same year Murray takes control of the dictionary. The light filtering through the barred window illuminates dust motes dancing in the air. The room is a sanctuary of paper and ink. Books are not just on shelves. They are stacked on the floor, on his bed, on every available surface. It is the library of a man with nowhere to go. And now, he holds in his hands the small pamphlet that will change everything. It is Murray's appeal. As Miner reads it, you can see a flicker of something in his eyes that has been absent for a long time. Purpose. The proposal is perfectly suited to his unique circumstances. He has two things in infinite supply: time and books. He also has a mind perfectly attuned to this kind of work. He is meticulous, patient, and has a deep love of language. This isn't just a hobby. It's a form of salvation. It is a way to connect with the outside world, the world of scholarship and intellect from which he has been exiled. It's a task that requires no social interaction, no navigating the complexities of human relationships that so often trigger his paranoia. It is just him, the book, and the word. It is a clean, ordered, and meaningful task that can fill the long, empty hours between his nocturnal terrors. He begins. You watch him transform. The aimless reader becomes a hunter. He develops a system. He creates his own catalogs of his personal library. He identifies which books are most likely to contain the rare and early words the dictionary as editors are looking for. He focuses on antiquarian books from the 16th and 17th centuries, books that are hard to find and that few volunteers would have access to. He sits at his desk for hours on end, a book propped open before him. His eyes scan the page, not for story, but for specimens. When he finds one unusual word, or a common word used in a new way, he carefully transcribes the quotation onto one of the official dictionary slips. He is a model of efficiency. He notes the word, the full sentence, the source, the page, the date. His handwriting is neat and precise. He is the perfect volunteer. The slips begin to pile up. Dozens, then hundreds, then thousands. He bundles them together and mails them off to Mill Hill, to an address that to him is just a place on a map. He signs them, Dr. W.C. Miner, Broadmoor, Crowthorne, Berkshire. To the dictionary staff, Broadmoor is just a name. It could be a manor house, a private estate. They have no reason to think otherwise. The quality of his contributions is simply astounding. He doesn't just send in common words. He finds the first recorded use of artichoke. He provides crucial early quotations for words like bucket and bug. He is a master at finding the missing links in a word's history. His slips are so reliable, so perfectly researched, that they become the gold standard at the scriptorium. When the editors are stuck on a word, a common refrain becomes, "Have we heard from Dr. Minor on this one?" A common historical fact is that the postal system in Victorian Britain was remarkably efficient. With multiple deliveries a day in major centers, it was the backbone of commerce and communication. This efficiency was absolutely essential to the dictionary's crowdsourcing model, allowing for a constant flow of information between the volunteer readers and the scriptorium. It was the physical internet of its day. For Minor, each letter sent out and each new batch of slips requested was a tangible connection to a world he could no longer inhabit. A more obscure fact is that Minor would often create his own cross-referencing indices for the books he was reading. Before he even began looking for words for the OD, he would prepare his own personal index for a book, making it faster to locate specific terms. This pre-work highlights the systematic, almost obsessive nature of his mind, a trait that made him a peerless lexicographer, but also fueled his delusions. This work becomes his anchor. It structures his days. It gives him a sense of accomplishment and contribution that counteracts the crushing guilt and shame of his crime. Historians still debate the therapeutic value of this work for Minor. Did it truly help to heal his mind, or did it merely provide a powerful and absorbing distraction from his underlying psychosis? Some psychiatrists argue that such intense, solitary, and obsessive work could have actually reinforced his isolation and delusional tendencies. Others maintain that it was the only thing keeping him from complete mental collapse, giving him a reason to live. The work focuses his mind. A world where the only voices he has to engage with are the silent voices of long-dead authors. Day after day, the routine continues. The sun rises, he reads, he writes. The sun sets, he prepares for the nightly visitations. But now there is a difference. The days are no longer empty. They are filled with the quiet, satisfying hum of intellectual labor. He is building something. Slip by slip, quotation by quotation, he is contributing to the great monument being erected in Mill Hill. He is an inmate in a lunatic asylum, but he is also one of the most important figures in the history of English scholarship. He is a prisoner, and he is a collaborator. The two men, Murray and Minor, have never met. They have never spoken, but they are now partners, bound together by a shared obsession with words. You are back in the scriptorium in Mill Hill. Years are passing. The 1880s are in full swing. The work is grindingly slow, but it is moving forward. James Murray, now working on the dictionary full-time after moving his family and the scriptorium to Oxford, has established a relentless rhythm. The sheer scale of the project is now apparent to everyone. The original estimate of 10 years is a distant, comical memory. This is a multi-generational task. The scriptorium is no longer a clean, new shed. It's a seasoned, slightly ramshackle factory of words. The smell of old paper, ink, and Murray's snuff is baked into the wooden walls. The 1,029 pigeonholes are a sight to behold, a vast physical database of the English language. Murray's children, now growing up, are still part of the team. Their childhood memories filled with the endless sorting of paper slips. In this paper-filled world, one contributor stands out, a veritable giant among the hundreds of volunteers, Dr. W.C. Minor. His name is spoken with a kind of reverence. His contributions are not just numerous, they are of unparalleled quality. While other volunteers might send in a few dozen slips a month, Minor sends them in by the thousand. By the mid-1880s, he has submitted well over 10,000. He seems to anticipate the editor's needs, sending in quotations for obscure words they are just beginning to research. He has a genius for finding the earliest uses of words, the first citations that are the most prized jewels for a historical dictionary. Remember the old joke about building Wikipedia with postcards? Minor is like a single user who has somehow written half the articles, complete with footnotes and peer-reviewed sources. Murray and his team are baffled and intrigued. Who is this man? They imagine him to be a country gentleman of immense leisure and wealth, a reclusive scholar with a private library to rival the Bodleian. His address in Crowthorne suggests a rural estate. They picture him in a plush, leather-chaired study, surrounded by priceless first editions, perhaps with a butler to fetch him tea. The reality, as you know, is starkly different. His library is indeed impressive, but his study is a converted cell, and the only person who fetches him things is an asylum guard. The contrast between the imagined miner and the real miner is a chasm of irony. He is their most valuable player, and they have no idea he's playing from inside a prison. The reliance on miner becomes almost a dependency. When the sub-editors working on a particular letter of the alphabet get stuck, they will often send a list of desiderata, a list of needed quotations, directly to Dr. Miner. More often than not, a few days later, a package will arrive from Crowthorne with the missing quotes neatly transcribed. It's like having a magical oracle on retainer. He is particularly helpful with the difficult words, the ones whose origins are murky or whose meanings have shifted dramatically over time. A common historical fact is that the OD was groundbreaking for its inclusion of slang, regional dialects, and improper words. Unlike previous dictionaries that sought to be prescriptive, telling you how you should speak, Murray's goal was descriptive, showing how people do speak. This democratic approach was controversial, but it's what made the dictionary so revolutionary. Miner, with his access to racy 17th century literature, was an invaluable source for this kind of vocabulary. A quirky, lesser-known fact is the story of the word appendicitis. When the dictionary entry was being prepared, the word was so new that Murray, as medical advisors, told him it was just a passing fad and not to include it. A short time later, King Edward VII fell ill, and his coronation had to be postponed. The cause? A severe case of appendicitis. The word was suddenly on the front page of every newspaper. It was a perfect, if stressful, demonstration of how quickly the language could change and why the dictionary's work was never truly done. They had to hastily add the entry. Imagine the frantic search for quotations for a word that barely existed a year before. This is the kind of fire drill Miner was so good at helping with. Murray begins to feel a deep sense of personal and professional gratitude towards Miner. He corresponds with him regularly, not just about words, but as a fellow scholar. He shares his frustrations, his small victories. A genuine, if remote, friendship begins to form through their letters. Historians still debate the extent to which the asylum authorities monitored Miner's correspondence. Did they read his letters to and from Murray? It's likely they did, as was standard practice. If so, they would have seen a burgeoning intellectual partnership between their most famous inmate and one of the most respected academics in the country. They seem to have taken a don't ask, don't tell approach, recognizing that the work was beneficial for Miner's stability and brought a strange kind of prestige to their institution. The mystery of Dr. Miner, however, continues to grow in Murray's mind. Why has this man, his greatest ally, never once come to visit Oxford? Why is he so reclusive? Murray, a man who values personal connection, feels a growing desire to meet his collaborator in person, to thank him, to shake his hand. He wants to see the legendary library and to pay his respects to the scholar who has given so much to the great project. The name on the letters, Broadmoor, Crowthorne, is just a place on a map to him. He has no idea of its true nature. The stage is being set for one of the most remarkable encounters in literary history. The professor has no idea he is about to come face to face with the madman. Let us take a step back from the grand narrative and immerse ourselves fully in the physical reality of the work. You are standing once again inside the scriptorium, which has now moved with the Murray family to a large house on the Banbury Road in Oxford. The iron and wood shed has been reassembled in the back garden, a familiar home for this grand nomadic project. The air inside is thick and still, carrying the unique, not unpleasant scent of millions of pieces of aging paper, binder's glue, and weak tea. It is the smell of knowledge being wrestled into shape. It's quiet, but it's the hum of intense, focused labor, not the silence of inactivity. Look around you. The famous 1,029 pigeonholes dominate the room, a testament to Murray's obsession with order. But the order is under siege. Every pigeonhole is stuffed to bursting. Slips spill out onto the floor. Bundles of sorted quotations, tied with string, are stacked in precarious towers that threaten to collapse with the slightest vibration. It is organized chaos, an analog cloud server constantly on the verge of crashing. Murray's massive desk is the command center. It is littered with reference books, half-finished definitions, and piles of slips awaiting his final review. This is where the magic happens. A sub-editor brings him a packet of slips for a single word, say, art. This packet contains every quotation for art that the volunteers have found, sorted chronologically. Murray's job is to read through them all, from Chaucer to Tennyson, and from this evidence, deduce the word's life story. He must discern its various shades of meaning, its etymological roots, and how it has branched and evolved over centuries. Then he must distill all of that complex history into a concise, accurate definition. It is an act of intellectual synthesis that is nothing short of heroic. His assistants, often including his older children, work at smaller tables. Their task is the painstaking preliminary sorting. Imagine you are one of them. You are handed a rough, unsorted bundle of slips that have just arrived in the mail. Your first job is to sort them alphabetically. A slip for pudding goes in one pile, pylon in another. It's monotonous work, but crucial. Once you have a pile for a single word, you must then sort them chronologically, based on the date of the quotation. A slip from 1650 goes before one from 1780. This is how the word's timeline is built. The potential for error is immense. A misread date, a slip filed under the wrong letter, any small mistake could corrupt the historical record. The pressure to be accurate is constant. It's like being a data entry clerk for the soul of the language, and your only computer is your own brain. The children were paid a small amount for their work, with higher rates for finding a particularly good or rare quotation. It was a family business in the truest sense. A common historical fact of the period is the rise of a new professional class. For the first time, men could make a career not through land or inheritance, but through specialized knowledge as engineers, lawyers, and in Murray's case, as a lexicographer. The dictionary project itself was a symbol of this shift, a massive professional undertaking to codify knowledge. Murray, the self-taught son of a tailor, was the epitome of this new kind of intellectual mobility. A more obscure and amusing detail is that the scriptorium was often freezing cold in the winter and sweltering in the summer. It was poorly insulated, and Murray, ever frugal, resisted spending too much on heating. His assistants would work bundled in coats and scarves, their fingers numb with cold. One can only imagine trying to sort tiny slips of paper with frozen hands. It's a far cry from the cozy, scholarly image one might have. It is a joke among the staff that the only thing hotter than the summer scriptorium is Murray's temper when he finds a poorly researched slip. The human element is everywhere. You can see the different handwritings on the slips, from the elegant copperplate of a retired clergyman to the hasty scrawl of a busy student. You can read the little notes volunteers sometimes added in the margins. A dreadful novel, but this is a queer usage. Or is this a new word? Historians still debate the overall accuracy of the volunteer-submitted slips. While the system was brilliant, it relied on amateurs who could make mistakes. They might misdate a text, mistranscribe a sentence, or simply miss an important word. How many errors slipped through the net and into the final dictionary? While Murray's team of editors was a formidable filter, Some scholars argue that a small but significant number of ghost words and erroneous citations likely made it into the first edition, phantoms born of a volunteer's mistake, now immortalized in print. You watch Murray at his desk, his great beard almost touching the papers, a magnifying glass in one hand. He is completely absorbed. The world outside the scriptorium, the concerns of his large family, the rumblings of politics, the changing of seasons all fade away. There is only the word. He is not just its definer. He is its biographer, its judge, and its champion. The scriptorium is more than a workshop. It is a time machine, powered by paper and ink, allowing one man to travel through 1,000 years of language without ever leaving his chair. It is a place of immense, quiet, and relentless work. And it is this engine that is slowly, painstakingly turning the dream of a complete dictionary into a reality, one word at a time. The year is 1884. You are in Oxford, and there's a palpable sense of anxiety and anticipation in the air around the dictionary project. It has been 5 years since James Murray took over as editor, and 27 years since the Philological Society first proposed the idea. And so far, they have not published a single page. The delegates at Oxford University Press are getting nervous. They have invested a significant amount of money in Murray's salary, his assistants, and the scriptorium, and they have nothing to show for it but a shed full of paper slips. The press, the public, and the academic world are all starting to wonder if the project is, once again, a failure. The pressure on Murray is immense. He needs to produce something, anything, to prove that the work is progressing. The decision is made to release the dictionary, not as one enormous multi-volume set, which would take another 40 years, but in small, paper-bound installments called fascicles. The first fascicle is set to cover the words from A to ant. It sounds manageable, but even this small slice of the alphabet is a monumental task. The process of taking the raw material from the scriptorium and turning it into a printed page is incredibly complex. Every definition has to be finalized, every quotation verified, every etymology checked. Then, the manuscript has to be sent to the typesetters at the Clarendon Press. The typesetters, working with tiny metal letters, had to replicate the dictionary's complex system of fonts, symbols, and abbreviations. Proofs were printed and sent back to the scriptorium for correction. Murray and his team would scour these proofs for errors, marking them with meticulous care. The proofs would go back to the printer, be corrected, and new proofs would be sent. This back and forth could happen multiple times for a single page. It was a slow, laborious dance between the scholars and the printers. You are there in the scriptorium during these final, frantic months. The pace is grueling. Murray is working himself to the point of exhaustion, often fueled by little more than tea and sheer willpower. Every entry presents a new challenge. The word art, as you saw, is a nightmare of shifting meanings. And then there are the controversial words. You witness a heated debate over whether to include the word ain't. To many, it is an ugly, uneducated corruption of the language. It is not proper English. But Murray holds firm to his principle. The dictionary is a historical record, not a manual of etiquette. If people use the word ain't, and they clearly do, then it belongs in the dictionary. It is a small battle, but it represents the entire philosophical underpinning of the project. The descriptivists are winning against the prescriptivists. A common historical fact is that literacy rates in Britain rose dramatically throughout the 19th century, thanks to reforms like the Education Act of 1870, which made schooling compulsory for children. This created a huge new reading public, hungry for books, newspapers, and an authoritative dictionary to help them navigate this new world of words. The OED was, in a sense, being born at the perfect moment to meet this growing demand. A more obscure and amusing fact involves the sheer physical labor of the proofs. The printed proofs were huge, heavy sheets of paper. It is said that Murray's children would use the rejected, error-filled proofs as flooring for their dollhouses, creating miniature rooms carpeted with the history of the English language. It has a charming image, a tiny toy tea party taking place on top of the etymology of assassination. Finally, the day comes. In January 1884, the first fascicle is published. It is 352 pages long and costs 12 shillings and sixpence. It is titled The New English Dictionary on Historical Principles. You can feel the collective sigh of relief from everyone involved. Murray holds a copy in his hands. It is real. The abstract mountain of slips has been transformed into a tangible object, a book that people can buy and read. Historians still debate the public's initial reaction to the first fascicle. While it received rave reviews from scholars who understood its monumental scope and revolutionary method, some parts of the popular press were underwhelmed. They had been promised the greatest dictionary ever, and after 27 years, all they got was a thin booklet that didn't even make it to be. One critic famously quipped that, at this rate, the editor would be in his grave long before the dictionary reached its conclusion, a joke that was uncomfortably close to the truth. Despite the mixed public reaction from Murray and his team, it is a triumph. They have proven it can be done. The publication quiets the critics at the press and secures the project's future. There is a small celebration. But the next day, it is back to work. Ant is done. Now for anteater. Then antelope. The alphabet stretches before them like an endless, unforgiving road. But now they have a map, and they have taken the first crucial step on the journey. And all the while, the packages keep arriving from Crowthorne. Dr. Miner's contributions are all over this first fascicle. His meticulous slips transformed into printed entries. He is an architect of this first small victory, a ghost in the machine he helped to build. Several years have now passed since the publication of the first fascicle. You are with James Murray in his scriptorium in Oxford. It is the late 1880s. The dictionary is moving forward, albeit at a glacial pace. Fascicles are being released every year or so, slowly carving a path through the alphabet. The project is a permanent feature of the Oxford landscape, a quiet, relentless engine of scholarship. Murray himself has become a celebrated, if eccentric, figure. He has been awarded an honorary Master of Arts degree from Oxford, a formal recognition that the outsider from Scotland is now a pillar of the academic establishment. He is respected, even revered, in scholarly circles. But one thing still gnaws at him: the mystery of Dr. W.C. Miner. The man's contributions have not waned. If anything, they have become even more crucial as the dictionary moves into more complex territory. He is, without a doubt, the single most important volunteer the project has ever had. Murray's sense of gratitude has deepened into a powerful curiosity. He feels a real intellectual kinship with this man he has never met. Their correspondence is regular and warm, a conversation between two extraordinary minds, but Miner remains an enigma. He deflects every suggestion of a meeting, every invitation to visit Oxford. He is polite but firm, always citing his poor health or his need for quiet seclusion. Murray, a sociable man, finds this intense reclusiveness both fascinating and frustrating. One day, Murray is attending a formal dinner in London. He is seated next to an American gentleman who happens to be a prominent figure involved in overseeing expatriate affairs. Making polite conversation, Murray mentions his great project and the invaluable help he receives from hundreds of volunteers. He specifically names his star contributor, a brilliant and reclusive American scholar named Dr. W.C. Miner, who lives on a country estate called Broadmoor in Berkshire. The American gentleman's face pales slightly. He looks at Murray with a mixture of confusion and concern. Broadmoor is not a private estate, he says quietly. It is the state asylum for the criminally insane. You can feel the world shift under Murray's feet. The room, with its clinking glasses and polite chatter, seems to fade away. It's a moment of profound, jarring cognitive dissonance. The image he has so carefully constructed in his mind, the gentleman scholar in his plush, library shatters into 1,000 pieces. In its place is a far more disturbing picture. A man in a cell, a prisoner. The name Broadmoor on all those thousands of slips suddenly takes on a chilling new meaning. It wasn't a name. It was a confession. Everything suddenly, horribly, makes sense. Miner's reclusiveness, his poor health, his endless supply of time. His greatest collaborator, his intellectual partner, is an inmate in a lunatic asylum. A common historical fact is that Victorian society had a deep-seated fear and fascination with madness. Asylums were often built in isolated locations, keeping the mentally ill out of sight and out of mind. The idea of a madman contributing to a great scholarly work would have been shocking, even unthinkable to most people. It challenged the rigid boundaries between sanity and insanity, genius and delusion. A more obscure fact is that many of the asylum superintendents of this era, like the one at Broadmoor, were highly educated men who saw themselves as enlightened reformers. They often encouraged therapeutic occupations for their patients. And it is possible the governor of Broadmoor knew exactly who Miner was corresponding with, and saw it as a unique and positive form of therapy for his patient, a sign of the institution's progressive nature. Murray returns to Oxford in a state of shock, his mind racing. He must have felt a complex swirl of emotions, disbelief, pity, and perhaps even a strange sense of betrayal. He immediately begins to make discreet inquiries. He contacts his friends at the American consulate. He writes to the governor of Broadmoor. The story is confirmed, and he learns the tragic details of Miner's life, the trauma of the Civil War, the descent into paranoia, the killing of George Merritt. The man who'd been a name on a slip of paper is now a figure of profound tragedy. The meticulous quotations he provided for words like kill, pistol, or death now seem unimaginably poignant. Historians still debate how Murray processed this revelation. Did it change his opinion of Miner's work? Did he fear that associating the dictionary with a criminal lunatic could damage its reputation? The evidence suggests the opposite. Murray's compassion and his respect for Miner's intellect seemed to override any sense of scandal. He saw not a madman, but a brilliant mind trapped in a tragic fate. His desire to meet Miner is now more urgent than ever. It is no longer just about thanking a contributor. It is about connecting with the man himself, about bridging the gap between their two vastly different worlds. He arranges a visit. He will travel to Crowthorne, not to see a country estate, but to pass through the gates of an asylum. He is going to finally meet the man who has been his silent partner for so long. You can feel the weight of this impending encounter. It is a meeting that feels like it belongs in a novel, a convergence of two lives so intertwined by a love of words, yet so brutally separated by circumstance. The journey to Broadmoor will be a journey into the heart of the mystery he has pondered for nearly a decade. You are traveling with James Murray on a train from Oxford to Berkshire. It's a gray, overcast day, the English countryside rolling by in a blur of green and brown. The rhythmic clatter of the train on the tracks is a steady beat beneath a swirl of thoughts and emotions. Murray is on his way to Broadmoor. The name no longer conjures images of a grand country house, but of high walls and barred windows. He is about to meet the man who is both his most brilliant collaborator and a convicted killer, held in an asylum for the insane. You can sense his trepidation, his curiosity, his deep human compassion. How do you greet a man like that? What do you say? He arrives at the station in Crowthorne and takes a carriage to the asylum. The building is just as imposing as he had imagined, a vast red brick monolith that dominates the landscape. He presents his credentials at the gatehouse and is escorted inside. The contrast between the outside world and the world within the walls is immediate. There is a strange institutional quietness, a sound of footsteps echoing in long corridors, the distant, unintelligible murmur of voices. He is led to the office of the asylum's governor. The governor is a surprisingly progressive man. He speaks of Miner with a kind of weary affection, describing him as a model patient, quiet, scholarly, and generally harmless, despite his persistent and elaborate delusions. He confirms the arrangement. Miner's 2 cells, one for sleeping, one for his library. He grants Murray permission to meet him. An attendant leads Murray through another series of corridors to Miner's cell block. The attendant unlocks a heavy door, and Murray steps inside. The room is small, but it is crammed from floor to ceiling with books. Light from a single barred window illuminates the space. And there, sitting at a small desk, is a man. He is slender and well-dressed, with a neatly trimmed white beard and an air of quiet dignity. He looks up as Murray enters. This is William Chester Miner. He looks less like a dangerous lunatic and more like a retired professor. For a moment, the 2 men simply look at each other. This is the culmination of years of correspondence, of thousands of slips of paper, of a partnership that has spanned an ocean and the walls of an asylum. Murray, ever the gentleman, breaks the silence. "I am Dr. Murray," he says, extending his hand. Miner stands and takes it. "And I am Dr. Miner," he replies, his voice soft. There is no grand speech, no dramatic revelation, just a simple, profound moment of human connection. You are witnessing the first meeting of the professor and the madman. They sit and talk for hours. Miner is lucid, intelligent, and articulate. They talk about words, about etymology, about the challenges of the dictionary. They are 2 masters of their craft, finally able to speak face to face. Miner shows Murray his system, his personal catalogues, his method for hunting down quotations. Murray is in awe. The scriptorium in Oxford is a marvel of organization, but this one-man operation in a tiny cell is a miracle of dedication. A common historical fact is that personal reputation and character were immensely important in Victorian England. A man was judged by his conduct, his associations, and his standing in the community. For Murray to so willingly associate himself and his life's work with an asylum inmate was a significant act of courage and intellectual integrity. It showed that he valued Miner's mind far more than he feared any potential scandal. A more obscure fact is that, according to some accounts of this first meeting, Miner was initially quite shy and hesitant. It was Murray's genuine warmth and his obvious, passionate interest in Miner's work that put him at ease and allowed the conversation to flow. Murray didn't see an inmate. He saw a colleague, and he treated him as such. As the afternoon wears on, the conversation deepens. Miner, trusting Murray, begins to speak of his troubles. He doesn't go into graphic detail, but he alludes to the nocturnal torments, the persecutors who haunt him. Murray listens with quiet empathy. He does not judge. He does not offer false reassurances. He simply listens. Historians still debate the psychological impact of this meeting on both men. For Miner, it was a powerful validation. The editor of the Great Dictionary, a pillar of the scholarly world, had come to him. It affirmed his identity as a scholar, an identity that was constantly threatened by his status as a patient and a prisoner. For Murray, it put a human face on the tragedy. It solidified his resolve to support Miner in any way he could. It was no longer a professional relationship. It had become a genuine friendship. As the day ends and it's time for Murray to leave, there is a sense of a bond having been forged. They shake hands again. Murray promises to return. As he walks away from the cell, down the long, echoing corridors, and out through the asylum gates, the world looks different. The dictionary is no longer just a scholarly project. It is now a story of human resilience, of the power of the mind to find purpose in the darkest of places. It is the story of an unlikely and extraordinary friendship. The mystery of Dr. Minor has been solved, but in its place is a much deeper, more complex human story. Following that first remarkable meeting, a new phase of the collaboration begins. The friendship between James Murray and William Minor, rooted in letters, now blossoms through regular visits. You are a silent observer of this unique partnership. Several times a year, Murray makes the journey from Oxford to Broadmoor. He brings with him lists of troublesome words, proofs of upcoming fascicles, and news from the world of scholarship. These visits become a highlight for both men. For Murray, it is a chance to consult with his most brilliant expert. For Minor, it is a vital link to the world, a reminder that he is more than just inmate number 742. The asylum authorities, led by the enlightened governor, are remarkably supportive of this arrangement. They see the positive effect the work and the friendship are having on Minor's stability. They grant Murray unprecedented access. You watch as Minor's cell is transformed even further into a remote annex of the scriptorium. Shelves are built. More books are brought in. The governor even allows a special door to be cut between Minor's two cells, making it easier for him to move between his sleeping quarters and his library. It's a small architectural change, but a huge symbol of the trust and esteem in which he is held. His cell is no longer just a place of confinement. It is a recognized and respected scholarly workshop. Their working sessions are a sight to behold. Murray will unroll a long proof sheet on Minor's small desk. The two men, one with his grand flowing beard, the other with his neat white one, will huddle over the page. Murray points to a word. "We're struggling with pudding," he might say. "The etymology is a mess, and we're missing any uses before 1400. Minor will nod, turn to his meticulously organized library, and within minutes, pull a dusty, leather-bound volume from a shelf. "I believe there's a mention in a manuscript from the 1320s. He'll murmur, his fingers expertly flipping through the fragile pages. It is a perfect synergy. Murray has the grand vision and the organizational machine. Minor has the deep library and the monk-like focus. Together, they are a formidable lexicographical force. Remember that modern joke about a startup? This is the ultimate remote work collaboration, conducted a century before Zoom, between an office in Oxford and a highly secure facility in Berkshire. A common historical fact is that Oxford University in the late 19th century was undergoing a period of significant reform and modernization. The curriculum was expanding, new colleges were being founded, and there was a greater emphasis on research. The dictionary project, based in Oxford, was a flagship example of this new, rigorous, research-based approach to the humanities. It helped cement Oxford's reputation as a world leader in scholarship. A more obscure, and rather touching, detail is that Murray often brought his children with him on his visits to Broadmoor. They would play in the asylum gardens while their father worked with Minor. This speaks volumes about Murray's view of the situation. He did not see Broadmoor as a place of terrifying monsters, but as a hospital where a friend was being treated. He wanted his children to see Minor not as a madman, but as the kind, brilliant man he was. This collaboration allows the dictionary to accelerate. Minor's contributions are now even more targeted and effective. He is no longer just a volunteer sending slips into the void. He is an integrated part of the editorial team, a senior consultant with a very unusual office. He helps solve some of the most difficult etymological puzzles and provides a steady stream of rare, vital quotations. But the friendship goes beyond the work. They talk about their families, about literature, about their shared Presbyterian faith. Murray becomes Minor's advocate, his champion within the asylum system and to the outside world. He ensures Minor receives the books he needs and the respect he deserves. Historians still debate the ethics of this collaboration from a modern perspective. Was Murray, however unintentionally, exploiting a vulnerable man's obsessive-compulsive tendencies for the benefit of his project? Or was he providing a form of cognitive behavioral therapy that gave Miner's life meaning and structure it would otherwise have lacked? Most scholars lean towards the latter, arguing that the relationship was mutually beneficial and based on genuine respect and affection. Murray gave Miner a purpose, and Miner gave Murray invaluable help. It was a symbiotic relationship that, while unconventional, seemed to genuinely help both men. You can see the truth of this in Miner's demeanor. During Murray's visits, he is animated, engaged, and almost cheerful. The work gives him an escape from the demons that haunt his nights. By focusing his powerful intellect on the history of a word, he can, for a time, ignore the terrifying fictions his own mind creates. The dictionary is his anchor in a sea of psychosis. It is a lifeline of pure, beautiful logic in a world of irrational fear. The partnership between the professor and the madman is now at its peak. They are an unstoppable team, conquering the alphabet one word at a time. But this golden era, like all things, cannot last forever. The relentless march of time and the fragility of the human mind will soon begin to cast a long shadow over their extraordinary friendship. The years continue to pass. The 19th century gives way to the 20th. You are witnessing the slow, inevitable decline that comes with age and illness. The golden age of the Murray-Miner collaboration is drawing to a close, not because of any disagreement, but because of the harsh realities of the human condition. The dictionary, that immense and unforgiving taskmaster, is taking its toll on everyone involved. First, you see the change in James Murray. He is now an old man. The magnificent beard is white. The energetic stride has slowed to a shuffle. Decades of working 12-hour days, of poring over tiny print in the drafty scriptorium, of bearing the immense administrative and intellectual weight of the entire project, have worn him down. His health is failing. He is diagnosed with pleurisy, an inflammation of the lungs that makes breathing painful. Yet he refuses to stop. The dictionary has become his life. To stop working would be to stop living. You see him at his desk, wrapped in a blanket even in mild weather. His breath labored, but his eyes still focused on the proofs before him. He is in a desperate race against time. He knows he will not live to see the project completed. His personal goal is now just to finish the letter T. The alphabet, once an open road, is now a finish line he is sprinting towards with the last of his strength. At the same time, you are witnessing a far more tragic decline at Broadmoor. William Miner's mental state, which had been stabilized for years by the routine of his work and his friendship with Murray, is deteriorating precipitously. His delusions are becoming more intense, more terrifying. The nocturnal visitations are more frequent and more violent. The anchor of the dictionary is no longer strong enough to hold him against the rising storm of his psychosis. He becomes convinced that he is being systematically poisoned, that his food is tainted. He grows thin and frail. His work on the dictionary falters. He can no longer focus on the page. The words blur, and the letters seem to rearrange themselves into threatening messages. The culmination of this decline is a horrific act of self-harm. In the grip of a powerful delusion related to his past sexual transgressions, Miner takes a penknife he was allowed to keep for his scholarly work and performs a crude act of self-mutilation. You are spared the graphic details, but the aftermath is one of quiet, clinical horror. The asylum staff find him bleeding in his cell. They save his life, but the event marks a point of no return. It is a devastating manifestation of the guilt and torment that have plagued him for decades. The brilliant mind that could trace the history of a word through centuries of literature could not escape the prison of its own making. A common historical fact is that the early 20th century saw the beginnings of psychoanalysis. With the work of figures like Sigmund Freud, these new theories were beginning to explore the role of the subconscious, guilt, and trauma in mental illness. Miner's case, with its clear links to wartime trauma and personal guilt, seems like a textbook example of the kinds of psychological maladies these new thinkers were trying to understand. An obscure and tragic detail is that after his act of self-mutilation, Miner's privileges at Broadmoor were, for the first time, severely curtailed. His books were taken away for a time, and his movements were restricted. The trust that had been built up over decades was shattered by this one desperate act. Murray is devastated when he learns the news. He rushes to Broadmoor to see his friend. The man he finds is a shadow of his former self, physically weak and lost in a fog of paranoia and fear. They can no longer discuss etymology. The shared language of scholarship is gone, replaced by the fractured language of delusion. Historians still debate what triggered Miner's final, severe decline. Was it simply the natural progression of his schizophrenia? Or did the aging process, combined with decades of institutionalization, finally break his resilience? Some have even suggested that as Murray aged and his visits became less frequent, Miner felt a sense of abandonment that exacerbated his condition. It becomes clear that Miner can no longer stay at Broadmoor. His health is too fragile, and his case now requires more specialized care. Murray, in one of his last great acts of friendship, uses his considerable influence to help. He campaigns for Miner's release and deportation back to the United States. He argues that the man has served his time and deserves to spend his final years in the care of his family. In 1910, after 38 years in the asylum, William Chester Miner is quietly put on a ship and sent home. The great collaboration is over. The two friends will never see each other again. The scriptorium in Oxford and the library in the Broadmoor cell, once so deeply connected, are now separated by an ocean and by the even greater gulf of a mind that has come untethered. You are now in the final years of this long intertwined story. The two central figures are separated, and their worlds are winding down. The great partnership that fueled the dictionary for decades has been dissolved by illness and distance. First, you are with William Miner. He has returned to America, a country he has not seen in nearly 40 years. He is placed in a government hospital for the insane in Washington, D.C. He is now an old, frail man, a ghost haunted by a life of specters. His brother, who has managed his affairs from afar for all these years, visits him. But there is little connection left. The brilliant scholar is almost entirely gone, submerged beneath the waves of his delusions. He is no longer a contributor to the world's greatest dictionary. He is just a patient, another sad case in a crowded institution. He lives out his remaining years in this quiet, hazy state. He dies in 1920 in a hospital in Connecticut and is buried in a quiet cemetery in New Haven, the city where he attended Yale so many years before, a place full of a promise that was so tragically unfulfilled. His death goes largely unnoticed by the wider world. The story of his immense contribution to the OED is known only to a handful of people in Oxford. Meanwhile, back in England, you are with James Murray. He is in his scriptorium, fighting his own battle against time. The departure of Miner was a personal blow, but the work of the dictionary must go on. It is an institution now, larger than any one individual. Murray pushes himself relentlessly, his focus narrowed to a single, desperate goal, finishing the letter T. He is surrounded by his loyal assistants, including some of his own children, who are now adults and seasoned lexicographers in their own right. The scriptorium is still a hive of activity, but its leader is fading. You can see the immense effort it takes for him to lift the heavy reference book, the way he has to pause to catch his breath. His mind remains as sharp as ever, but his body is failing him. He works on the entries for travel, truth, and turn. He is deep into the word turn down when he can go on no longer. The pleurisy has taken its final hold. He is confined to his bed. The great engine of the scriptorium falls silent for the first time in decades. On July 26, 1915, with his family around him, Sir James Murray, he had been knighted in 1908 for his work, dies at the age of 78. he dies having never reached the end of his beloved alphabet. His last completed entry was turpitude. The news of his death is reported in newspapers around the world. He is mourned as a giant of scholarship, a man whose dedication and genius gave the English-speaking world one of its greatest treasures. The dictionary, however, is not dead. Just as Murray had taken over a failing project decades earlier, a new generation of editors now steps up to continue his work. Henry Bradley and William Craigie, who had been working alongside Murray for years, take over as senior editors. The system Murray created, the scriptorium, the slips, the historical principles, is so robust that it can continue without its creator. It's the ultimate testament to his genius. He didn't just write a dictionary. He built a machine for writing a dictionary, a machine that could be operated by others. A common historical fact is that World War I, which was raging at the time of Murray's death, had a profound impact on the English language, introducing new words like tank, trenchcoat, and shell shock. The dictionary, being a living document, would have to incorporate this new, violent vocabulary, a task left to Murray's successors. A lesser-known fact is that after Murray's death, his scriptorium was eventually dismantled. The famous pigeonholes, which had held the raw material of the language for so long, were saved and are now on display in Oxford, a physical monument to the immense labor of the project. It's a strange thought that the entire history of thousands of words once resided in those simple wooden boxes. Historians still debate the psychological cost of the dictionary on the Murray family. While the children expressed great pride in their father's work, their entire childhood and family life were completely dominated by the relentless demands of the book. Was the price of this great monument a stolen childhood for the 11 Murray children who spent countless hours sorting slips instead of playing? You feel the immense poignancy of this moment. The two great architects of the dictionary are now gone. The professor, who gave his entire life to the project, and the madman, who found his life's purpose within it, have both left the stage. Their extraordinary story, a story of friendship, genius, and tragedy, is over. But the book, the great work to which they devoted themselves, lives on. The presses at Oxford continue to turn, and the final letters of the alphabet U, V, W, X, Y, Z, are steadily being conquered by the editors who walk in their footsteps. The end of an era has arrived, but the legacy is only just beginning to be understood. The year is 1928. You are standing in the Great Hall of Goldsmiths College in London. The room is filled with the most distinguished figures of the British literary and academic worlds. There is a sense of momentous occasion in the air, the culmination of a long, arduous journey. It has been 71 years since that first meeting of the Philological Society, where the audacious dream of a complete dictionary of English was born. Today, that dream is a reality. The final fascicle has been published. The last word, sixt, a Kentish dialect verb meaning to see, has been defined and put to bed. The new English Dictionary on Historical Principles, now more commonly known as the Oxford English Dictionary, is complete. A celebratory banquet is being held. Speeches are given. The Prime Minister, Stanley Baldwin, speaks of the dictionary as a great national treasure. Tributes are paid to the editors, the assistants, the printers, and the thousands of volunteer readers who contributed slips. And of course, a special tribute is paid to the man who made it all possible, Sir James Murray. His widow and some of his children are in attendance, their faces a mixture of pride and bittersweet memory. They are celebrating the completion of the book that was the central, all-consuming fact of their family's life. It is a moment of immense triumph, a victory for scholarship, for dedication, and for the English language itself. But as you look around the Grand Hall, you notice a name that is not mentioned, a name that is spoken only in whispers, if at all. The name of Dr. William Chester Minor. His contribution, arguably as significant as any of the official editors, save Murray himself, is a secret, a footnote, known only to a few insiders. In the official histories and the celebratory speeches, his role is erased. To acknowledge that a significant portion of this great monument to reason and scholarship was built by an inmate of a lunatic asylum is, perhaps, a truth too strange, too uncomfortable for the establishment to embrace. His ghost haunts the celebration, an unseen and uncredited co-author. It would take another half-century for his story to be widely told and for his crucial role to be properly recognized. A final dictionary is a staggering achievement. It consists of 10 massive volumes containing 414,825 defined words, illustrated by 1,827,306 quotations. It is not just a book. It is a cathedral of language, a paper monument to the richness and chaos of human expression. The most common historical fact about the OED is its sheer size and the length of time it took to complete. It stands as one of the most ambitious scholarly projects ever undertaken. Its completion was seen as a landmark event in the cultural life of the English-speaking world. But a final, obscure fact is about that very last word, Zixt. It's a word so obscure that its inclusion was almost a private joke amongst the editors. A final, quirky flourish at the end of a very long road. It's a reminder that for all its scholarly weight, the dictionary was also a very human document. And what is the true legacy of this great work and the strange story of its creation? Historians and linguists will forever debate the OED's ultimate impact. Did it tame the English language, or did it merely provide a beautiful, detailed portrait of an untamable beast? It certainly didn't stop the language from changing. New words are born every day, words like internet, selfie, analogy, that Murray and Minor could never have dreamed of. The OED is not a final destination. It is a snapshot, a continuous work in progress, with teams of lexicographers today still revising and adding entries, continuing the work that began in that dusty London room so long ago. The legacy, perhaps, is not the book itself, but the principle behind it, that every word has a story, and that the language belongs to everyone who uses it, from poets and professors to the common person on the street. It is the story of how two brilliant, obsessive, and profoundly different men, one a celebrated scholar and the other a forgotten prisoner, came together to create something vast, beautiful, and enduring. Their lives, one lived in the full light of public acclaim, the other in the deep shadow of private torment, are forever intertwined in the pages of the book they helped to build. And so, our journey through a life of words comes to a gentle close. The great dictionary is finished, resting on the shelves of libraries around the world, a silent testament to a very human story of ambition, dedication, tragedy, and an unlikely friendship. The frantic energy of the scriptorium has long since faded. The rustle of a million papers slips now, just an echo in the halls of history. The figures of James Murray, with his magnificent beard and his tireless eyes, and William Minor, with his quiet dignity in the face of his own private darkness, begin to soften and recede, becoming part of the very history they worked so hard to document. As the image of those 10 formidable volumes fades from your mind, allow the weight of the story to settle, and then to drift away. Let the quietness of the library, the imaginary scent of old paper and ink, become a peaceful backdrop for your own descent into rest. There are no more words to define tonight, no more quotations to track. The work is done. All that is left is the quiet and the calm that follows the end of a long and satisfying tale. Let your own thoughts slow down now, the rhythms of your breathing becoming deeper and more regular, as you drift away from the world of waking concerns and into the soft, boundless realm of your dreams.